Hello, I'm Dan Marr from the law firm of Hamlin and Kerrigan in Nashua, New Hampshire. I've been practicing law for approximately 37 years in New Hampshire, about 28, 29 in Massachusetts. And I, as part of my practice, represent a lot of businesses and as such represent a lot of both the employer side of the business as well as executives dealing with some of the issues that they have with their own employment. And I'm going to be talking today about, in general, that could get you fired. That's my theme for today's show is some certain things that people don't think about are clear, but still can get them fired. I have a few of those that I want to talk about today. Um, First is gossip. And this helps both for the employer and the employee. The employer has the right to tell the employees to stop being a gossip. If they're talking about non-work related issues, they want to talk about what's going on with somebody else's life, their divorce that's going on, maybe a coworker or somebody in the news, but particularly if they're dealing with coworkers and they're dealing with the cohesiveness of the company because they want to talk gossip. They want to say, I can't believe that this person's going through a divorce or they have this problem with their child. And they want to talk about that and they're talking behind the back of the person or to their face and they're making these comments. You as the employer can go and tell them to stop that. They don't have the right to do that at the workplace. They don't have freedom of speech. And it flows into also political speech. People think that they have the right in the private workplace to discuss whether they like Trump or they like Harris or they like the gubernatorial candidates, and they want to talk about that stuff. Generally, civil discussion with that is certainly permitted by the employer, but if it gets uncivil or distracts from the workplace, the employer has the right to stop it because you do not have freedom of speech in the workplace, in the private workplace. You have the right to talk about work-related things under the National Labor Relations Act. Um, so you can talk about why you think that your boss is being unfair, why your compensation is not fair. You can talk about your actual compensation. You're allowed to do that under federal law, but you're not allowed to. You don't have the rights. You're allowed to, but you don't have the right to talk about gossip for as to people outside the workplace, work-related or non-work related things, or talking about political speech. You don't have that right, constitutional right, that freedom of speech. First Amendment right doesn't apply to your employer. The employer doesn't have to do that if it's a private workplace. It's a little bit different if it's a public workplace. There's a little bit more free speech there because free speech is the government doing this. So you don't have that. So gossip, stay away from it. As an employer, yes, you can chime in and say, look, you don't have freedom of speech on this. I don't want you to talk about this. This is affecting the cohesiveness as long as it's not work-related things. And if you want to understand what is work-related and what's called concerted activity under the National Labor Relations Act, I'm happy to talk to you. I've dealt with this issue for a number of years, for many years. Next thing is obviously the lackadaisical attitude of an employee. The employee just maybe they started off good and they just lost luster, their luster of life, their passion of life, and they're just doing maybe working to rule, maybe not even working to rule. And in that situation, an employer talking to that person and trying to encourage them to get better makes sense. But you don't have to. And as an employee, if you just think you're just going to continue to do the job and you're just barely getting by and you're not exceeding, you should expect that someday, particularly when they have a potential replacement, you're going to be replaced. And so watch out for your lackadaisical attitude. Um, Off-site behavior that impacts the workplace. You go to a party, maybe one of your coworkers has a party and you get too drunk and you make a jerk of yourself and maybe even you sexually harass somebody because you keep on hampering on that person to date them. You can find out Monday morning that you got a rude awakening that you don't have a job anymore because the employer can deal with that. Employers talking to people about that issue, about what happens, the old happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. No, it doesn't. As to the workplace, if you do something outside the workplace that impacts the cohesiveness of the workplace, the employer can do that. And also the employer as an employee under the employee will doctrine in New Hampshire, which is very valid, They can fire you with or without cause and with or without notice, as long as it's not for something public policy would encourage, or you refusing to do something public policy would discourage, and them acting in bad faith and retaliation for you doing that stuff. What that means generally is, other than the statutory issues of, all the protected classes, they're not doing it because of your race, your religion, your sexual orientation, your transgender, your any of the protected classes or protected activity like your whistleblowing or you got work related injuries, any of those types of issues. They can make the decision that you were a jerk outside the workplace, and even though it doesn't impact the workplace, I don't want you around anymore. So you've done something bad outside the workplace, that maybe it's dealing with your family, maybe it's a true domestic violence issue. It's not a fake, it's not something that somebody make a false allegation against you, and the boss just decides I don't want you around anymore. They can do that. It's not going to fit into the public policy exception of the employer will doctrine. So be careful about what happens in the work outside the workplace. Um, Side hustles. You do some business on the side, um, competing with the employer, and particularly if you're using some of their product, you're going to find you're going to be out of a job fast, because, and the employer often will, and when they seek advice from me, I will strongly recommend that they get fired for these side hustles where they maybe take the extra paving from a job and they do a side hustle without the owner's permission. That obviously impacts the reputation of the company. It takes product away from the company, and it might also be detracting from you working for the company, doing your full job that you're supposed to be doing. So be careful about that. Make sure if you are doing any of these side hustles, your boss, your owner knows about it, and they're okay with it. So those are the things that can get you fired. If you have questions, give me a call at 603-883-5501, or check out our website, nationallaw.com. We got a lot of useful information. My radio show was there through last year, and these blogs are there. So I look forward to working with you. The opportunity arises.